He was an immortal. The muscles from Brussels, a human weapon who could shatter bone with a single spinning kick. On screen, he was Frank Dux in Bloodsport, Kurt Sloane in Kickboxer, the Twin Dragons in Double Impact. Jean-Claude Van Damme wasn't just a movie star. He was a global phenomenon, a furious storm of power and grace that defined an entire era of action cinema. His gravity-defying splits and fiery gaze were burned into the minds of millions. But behind the thunderous applause and Hollywood lights was a man bleeding from wounds that never healed. 5 shattered marriages, betrayals that broke his trust, and an abyss of addiction that nearly dragged him to his grave. Now, at 63, Van Damme no longer fights for glory. He battles the scars of a life harsher than any role he ever played. What secrets still burn behind the eyes of the man who conquered the world? The answers are tragic, haunting, and unforgettable. Behind the man who could break mountains lived a fragile spirit, waging silent wars against a cruel echo of laughter that left scars no one could see. Jean-Claude Camille Francois van Varenberg was born on October 18, 1960, in a quiet corner of Brussels, Belgium. His father was an accountant, his mother a florist. On the surface, it was an ordinary life, but in the mirror, Jean-Claude saw a heartbreaking image. A skinny, frail boy with thick glasses, tormented by bullies who called him a puny 4 eyes. At 11, the sting of humiliation became so sharp that he vowed to rewrite his own story. His father, sensing the storm brewing inside his son, enrolled him in a karate school under Master Claude Getz. For 4 brutal years, discipline became his second skin. By 18, he had a black belt and a spot on the Belgian national team, finally learning to turn shame into strength. But strength alone wasn't enough. In a move that brought even more ridicule, he chose ballet. For 5 relentless years, he trained at the bar, forging a grace and endurance that seemed impossible. Ballet is the hardest, he would later say. If you can survive a ballet workout, you can survive anything. To complete the transformation, he turned to bodybuilding, sculpting the fragile boy into a figure of steel, earning the Mr. Belgium title in 1978. These early battles etched themselves into his soul, preparing him for a destiny he couldn't yet imagine. A fight not against an enemy on screen, but against the world's brutal certainty that he would never be enough. He left Belgium with a body forged in karate, ballet, and iron, but nothing could have prepared him for the cold reality of America. In 1982, Van Damme landed in the United States with his friend, Michel Kesey, carrying only $3,000, a broken accent, and a dream bigger than life itself. Hollywood was a galaxy away. Nights found him curled in the back of a beat-up car, his stomach twisting with a hunger so violent that sleep was impossible. He later confessed to stealing food, an apple here, a sandwich there. Not out of defiance, but from the kind of gnawing desperation that hollows you out from the inside. Days blurred into a soul-crushing routine of knocking on studio doors only to have them slam shut. He was laughed at for his accent, dismissed as just another foreigner. Over 100 auditions ended the same way. The silence of the telephone afterward wasn't just quiet. It was a verdict that he would never belong. To survive, he delivered pizzas, laid floors, drove limousines, and even worked as a bouncer at Chuck Norris's bar. The irony was savage, protecting strangers at night while dreaming of fighting villains on the big screen. Still, he kept training, pushing his body through stretches and splits until pain screamed through his legs, believing that one day, someone had to notice. After years of poverty and humiliation, the world finally looked his way. In 1988, Bloodsport erupted onto the screen, and with it, Jean-Claude Van Damme became a legend. Made for just $1.5 million, the film became a global sensation. The immigrant with broken English was now the obsession of action cinema. He later confessed, "When Bloodsport came out, I cried because the little boy in Belgium was finally seen. The applause was blinding, and success crashed down like a tidal wave. Kickboxer turned a small budget into a $50 million triumph. A cascade of hits followed: Lionheart, Death Warrant, and Double Impact, where he fought himself in a dazzling display of grit and grace. Universal Soldier pitted him against Dolph Lundgren, thundering past $100 million and crowning him a global phenomenon. Then came Time Cop, the summit of his career, silencing critics and proving he could not only break bones, but also break hearts. He was reshaping Hollywood, yet the dream that had lifted him from hunger was now chaining him in golden shackles. "I was working too much, flying from set to set. Exhausted," he admitted. The relentless schedule left him bruised, and the applause echoed louder than his own heartbeat. The cheers of millions couldn't fill the silence of his own home, where his family felt his absence. The salvation he once prayed for had become a merciless master, and in the shadows of fame, darker battles were waiting. Perhaps the most brutal battles are fought in the heart. His journey to stardom was paved with heartbreak, leaving a trail of broken vows in its wake. At just 20, he married Maria Rodriguez in Belgium, but his gaze was fixed on Hollywood. In 1982, he left for America, and their marriage crumbled under the weight of his ambition. It was the first wound his dream left on someone he loved. In Los Angeles, he met Cynthia Durdian, and their 1985 wedding seemed like a second chance. But his obsession consumed him. Cynthia later delivered a devastating confession. Living with Van Damme was hell because he only loved himself. Their marriage lasted just 1 year. Then came Gladys Portuguese in 1987, a former bodybuilding champion. For the first time, he had a home, with a son, Christopher, and a daughter, Bianca. But Hollywood demanded everything. Rumors of infidelity surfaced, and the family he'd prayed for fell apart. Their marriage collapsed in 1992, a devastating blow that proved no amount of fame could protect him from loss. His fourth marriage, to Darcy LaPierre in 1994, brought another son, Nicholas. But the storm inside Van Damme was still raging. Tabloids were set ablaze with rumors of an affair with pop star Kylie Minogue during the filming of Street Fighter. The marriage disintegrated in a blaze of bitter accusations, but the deepest wound was yet to come. When custody of Nicholas was stripped from him, Van Damme discovered a silence more merciless than any critic. "Not seeing my son," he later confessed, his voice cracking. "It broke me." Losing his son left a wound that no trophy could cover, and into that emptiness crept an enemy that lived inside his veins. By the mid-90s, whispers of drug use had become screams. Reports claimed he was consuming up to 10 grams of cocaine a day, an amount that would kill a lesser man. On the set of Street Fighter, he would vanish for days at a time, pulled into the undertow of addiction. The courts soon turned his private pain into public shame. A stunt accident on one of his films left a man partially blind, costing Van Damme nearly $500,000 in a settlement. Then Frank Dux, the man whose story made him famous, sued him over a script, and though Van Damme won, the headlines screamed betrayal. The blows kept landing. In a crowded New York bar, actor Chuck Zito flattened him in front of witnesses. The man who felled giants on screen was struck down in public, becoming tabloid fodder worldwide. Hollywood, once eager to crown him, began to pull away. Studios balked at his $20 million price tag, and the word blacklisted crept in like a death sentence. The stardom receded, leaving him stranded in silence. It was in that silence that the abyss finally opened. Alone in a Hong Kong hotel room, he admitted he thought about ending it all. The boy who once prayed for glory was ready to surrender. In 1999, the spiral led to flashing police lights and a DUI arrest. The hero was gone, leaving only a ghost stumbling through the ruins of his own legend. The fall was brutal, but the unbearable truth was that Jean-Claude Van Damme wasn't just fighting the world. He was fighting a storm inside his own mind. In the late 1990s, doctors finally gave the chaos a name: bipolar disorder. For years, he had been swinging between manic bursts of energy, training for 20 hours straight, and crushing lows where getting out of bed felt impossible. The diagnosis was a double-edged sword, devastating in what it revealed, but liberating in what it explained. For the first time, he had a chance to fight back against the enemy he could finally see. The battle for recovery began. Medication calmed the chemical storms in his brain, while therapy forced him to confront his shadows. He returned to the same discipline that had forged him as a boy: ballet, karate, and bodybuilding. This time, it wasn't for a movie role, it was for survival. Every stretch, every kick, every drop of sweat was a prayer to reclaim the man he was losing. It was no heroic montage. There were nights of shaking, days of doubt, and moments where giving up felt easier than enduring. But slowly, painfully, he broke free from the grip of addiction and brought his illness under control. Without discipline, he later confessed, "I would not have survived." By speaking openly about his mental health, he broke another wall, telling millions of fans that true strength isn't the absence of weakness, but the courage to face it. From the ruins of scandal and despair, Jean-Claude Van Damme began to rise again, not with a kick, but with a confession. In the 2008 film JCVD, he shattered the fourth wall in a raw, 6-minute monologue, weeping openly on screen. Audiences weren't watching an action star. They were watching a broken man begging to be understood. Time magazine called it Oscar-worthy. It was a resurrection. What followed were not just films, but fragments of a soul returning. He stole the show as the magnetic villain in The Expendables 2, proving the warrior still lived within him. Then, in 2013, the iconic Volvo commercial went viral. There he was, balanced between two moving trucks, legs stretched in a perfect split, a breathtaking display of poetry and motion. But his truest act of resurrection didn't happen under studio lights. In 1999, battered and lost, he returned to the one woman he had betrayed but never stopped loving, Gladys Portuguese. She had given him 2 children and the one thing Hollywood never could: a home. Their reunion was a battle of forgiveness, a daily choice to heal what fame had shattered. Today, she remains his anchor, the lighthouse that pulled him back from the abyss. This, above all, was the victory that mattered. Not the box office numbers or statues, but the rediscovery of family, forgiveness, and the defiant power of love. Today, at 63, Jean-Claude Van Damme lives in a quieter light. His estimated $40 million net worth has afforded him stability, with homes in Los Angeles, Brussels, and Hong Kong, monuments to survival for the man who once slept in a car. His health, once shattered, is now guarded with monk-like discipline. He still trains every day, not for the cameras, but for peace of mind. But his greatest riches are not measured in dollars. They are measured in resilience, in the family that chose to stay, and in the quiet fact that after storms that would have destroyed anyone else, he is still standing. He is no longer just the muscles from Brussels. He is a survivor who proved that the greatest battles are not won on screen, but in the silence of the human heart. His story is a testament carved in fire and ash that no matter how far you fall, redemption is always within reach.